Stop. Before you scroll, take a breath. This isn't just another motivational speech. This is psychology. There comes a point in your life when you feel emotionally exhausted. Not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long. Strong enough to always text first. Strong enough to always understand. Strong enough to forgive. Strong enough to accept less than you deserve. And one day, something shifts. You don't explode. You don't argue. You don't complain. You just stop. You stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to convince someone to see your value. And that silence, it changes everything. Here's what psychology teaches us. People don't value what feels guaranteed. When your presence feels permanent, your effort feels normal. When your attention feels unlimited, your absence feels impossible. But the moment you pull back, the brain reacts. Humans are wired to notice loss more than presence. It's called loss aversion. When something they assumed was secure starts fading, their mind shifts into alert mode. Suddenly they text. Suddenly they care. Suddenly they miss you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. They don't always miss you. They miss the access. They miss the emotional security. They miss knowing someone was always there. This is not about love. This is about attachment patterns. When you were available 24/7, you were predictable. When you forgive every mistake, you become safe. When you tolerate disrespect, you become easy. And easy things are rarely respected. Silence creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates value. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, you move from attachment to awareness. And awareness is power. You don't lose control when you stop chasing. You regain it. Because self-respect begins the moment approval is no longer your priority. You don't lose people by setting boundaries. You lose people who benefited from you having none. And that difference changes your mindset forever. Now let's go deeper. You weren't in pain because they left. You were in pain because you overinvested. Emotionally, mentally, energetically. When you give more than you receive, your brain builds expectation. And when that expectation collapses, it feels like rejection. But often it's not rejection, it's imbalance. Psychology shows that people mirror the energy they are allowed to give. If you overgive, they undergive. If you tolerate inconsistency, inconsistency becomes the standard. If you stay despite disrespect, disrespect becomes safe. This is called behavioral reinforcement. What you allow repeatedly becomes the pattern. That's why chasing never creates stability. It creates dependency. The more you chase, the more your identity becomes attached to their response. Your mood depends on their reply. Your confidence depends on their validation. Your peace depends on their attention. And that is emotional outsourcing. The shift happens when you bring the focus back. When you stop texting first, you gather data. When you stop initiating everything, you observe effort. When you stop explaining yourself, you measure understanding. Silence is not manipulation. It is information. It shows you who values connection without being pushed. And here's something powerful. Detachment is not about pretending not to care. It's about caring without losing yourself. You can love someone and still walk away. You can miss someone and still choose distance. Because maturity is realizing that chemistry is not compatibility, attention is not commitment, and words are not effort. The strongest psychological transformation is when you stop asking, "Why don't they choose me?" and start asking, "Why am I choosing someone who doesn't?" That question changes identity when you choose yourself. Your nervous system calms down. You stop overthinking. You stop waiting. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. Because your value is no longer dependent on external confirmation. And that is real confidence. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. The day you stop chasing is the day you stop negotiating your worth. And once your mind understands that, you don't lose people, you filter them. And filtering is growth. Let's finish this the right way. There's a version of you that doesn't chase. A version that doesn't panic when someone pulls away. A version that doesn't beg for reassurance. A version that doesn't shrink to stay chosen. That version already exists inside you, but it only appears when you stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else. Most emotional suffering doesn't come from loss. It comes from resistance. You resist the truth. You resist the red flags. You resist accepting that someone is not aligned with you, and that resistance creates anxiety. When you finally accept reality, your nervous system relaxes, because clarity feels safer than confusion. Read that again in your mind. Clarity feels safer than confusion. You don't actually want them back. You want the feeling you had when you thought they cared. But feelings created by uncertainty are not stability. They're dopamine spikes. And dopamine is addictive. That's why chasing feels intense. But intensity is not intimacy. Calm is intimacy. Security is intimacy. Consistency is intimacy. When you stop chasing, you interrupt the addiction cycle. You stop rewarding inconsistency. You stop feeding ego dynamics. You stop negotiating your boundaries, and something powerful happens. Your standards rise. And when standards rise, low-effort people fall away. That's not loneliness. That's refinement. You are not losing connection. You are upgrading alignment. Here's the truth most people learn too late. The right people don't need to be convinced. They don't need to be chased. They don't need constant reminders of your value. They see it, and they protect it. If someone only shows up when they feel you pulling away, they are reacting to loss of control, not awakening to love. Real love moves toward you consistently. It doesn't wake up when you disappear. So if you're in the quiet phase right now, don't rush it. Silence is restructuring your identity. You are moving from attachment to self-trust, from validation seeking to self-validation, from fear of losing to confidence in letting go. And once that shift locks in mentally, you don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you choose. You don't fear being alone, you fear betraying yourself again. And that is the moment. Your psychology changes permanently. Listen carefully. You don't lose people when you stop chasing. You lose illusions. And losing illusions is the beginning of freedom.